August, President Trump said he would personally campaign in the Texas Senate race, tweeting, "I will be doing a major rally for Senator Ted Cruz in October. I'm picking the biggest stadium in Texas we can find."
Awesome.
And I confirmed in the break it is Kyle Field, Joe, Texas A&M, 102,000 people. So the venue then for the rally on October 22nd is in an arena that seats 8,000 people. Not the biggest in the state or even in the area. Nearby NRG Stadium, home to the Houston Texans, has about 80,000 seats. The Toyota Center, home to the Houston Rockets, 18,000. This just 2 weeks after Democrat Beto O'Rourke and Willie Nelson attracted more than 50,000 people to a rally in Austin, Texas. The candidates will meet tonight in San Antonio for their second debate. Joe, I also have to point out Richard Linklater, Dazed and Confused. He directed Dazed and Confused. End of conversation.
Boy, end of conversation. That commercial is amazing, but it does point out something that, as you know, because you were in Tennessee for 4 years, what self-respecting Southerner or Texan trashes Whataburger and admits that they like White Castle?
Whataburger is a San Antonio company, by the way.
Yeah, but it's Whataburger, it's Crystal, and it's Chick-fil-A. That's your food pyramid in the South and in Texas. There's no criticizing Whataburger. That's like manna from heaven.
Yeah, I go Chick-fil-A 1. That's just me. And Crystal at 2 a.m. If you need 24 small burgers real quick, that's where you want to be at that Crystal.
It's a fine selection.
Thank you. Did they not have Whataburger up in Tennessee for you?
You know, I think it was too early for that. I mean, I've had it. I know what it is, and I know it's good, but it was not central to our late night eating. No.
Well, it was not only Whataburger was not only central to our family's late night eating. It was so good. That is what we had for Thanksgiving dinner. We go by the Whataburger,
you did not.
right across from what used to be Albertsons on North 9th Avenue. We'd get about 24, put them right in the middle of the table, and we'd have a very Whataburger Thanksgiving.
It's a beautiful platter, too. You lay it out with the fries and the whole thing. It's gorgeous.
With a W. And by the way, we need to start giving Whataburger. They sell Whataburger ketchup, so we need to start giving Whataburger ketchup as departing gifts to our Morning Joe guests.
Guess what? Steve Kornacki's about to get some then, because he's going to talk about some new polls showing Republican House members in battles to save their seats with 3 weeks left until those polls open. Just out this hour, a new Spectrum News Siena College poll of New York's 27th congressional district, where in Buffalo, indicted Republican Congressman Chris Collins is statistically tied with Democratic challenger Nate McMurray, 46-43. That's an area that backed President Trump by 25 points in 2016.
Wow.
The poll finds Collins' favorability rating in the district is a negative one, 37 to 49%, with only 48% of Republicans holding a favorable opinion of him. Collins has pleaded not guilty to insider trading charges related to his board membership in an Australian biotech firm. Steve, let me stop there for a second, and we'll get to Utah in just a second. Is that about Chris Collins exclusively, or is there a Trump effect there as well?
Yeah, no, and that's it. Joe will remember this name. Every midterm cycle, you end up getting a couple races like this where you can look at all the national factors, but there's something happening locally. In 1994, the name was Dan Rostenkowski, and he was running for re-election in Chicago, which is as Democratic as it gets, and Dan Rostenkowski was under indictment and lost his election to a Republican. And here you've got Chris Collins in a district that is the heart of sort of Trump country in western New York. 25 points again for Trump in 2016. Collins, the first member of Congress to endorse him, but I think because of this indictment, is sitting there in a dogfight now.
As we hinted, in Utah's 4th Congressional District, Republican Congresswoman Mia Love is dead even with the Democratic mayor of Salt Lake City, Ben McAdams. They're both at 46% in the Salt Lake Tribune Hinckley Institute of Politics poll, which also shows split-ticket voting in the Senate race, with Republican Mitt Romney dominating in polls there. In Florida's 26th Congressional District, which voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 and Barack Obama in 2012, Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo has a slight edge over Democrat Debbie Mucarsel Powell, 46 to 45, in the Mason-Dixon Telemundo 51 poll, Joe.
Yeah, Carlos has been doing a pretty good job. from the very beginning trying to separate himself from Donald Trump and represent the district more ideologically. So, Steve, let's look at a couple other races. The West Virginia poll, which, of course, talking about Trump country, West Virginia, the Trumpiest state in the nation, and yet here we have a very close race, again, within the margin of error between the Republican and the Democrat.
Yeah, and let me say, first of all, that number you're looking up at your screen, this is exclusive to Morning Joe. This is the first time anybody in the world is seeing this number. Our friends at Monmouth were kind enough to let us release this here so you can see Carol Miller, the Republican, leading Richard Ojeda. This is a district that Donald Trump carried by 50 points in 2016. You talk about that migration of West Virginia from the Democratic column as recently as the 1990s to a state that Trump won by 42 points. This district sort of captures that in terms of what Trump did in 2016. I think there is a bigger sort of story to point out here. If you look at this poll in West Virginia, if you look at the poll in New York with Chris Collins you just put up, and you look at the poll in Utah with Mia Love, these are three examples where there are local district-specific or candidate-specific factors that are at play here in endangering seats for Republicans that shouldn't be in danger. West Virginia 3 for obvious reasons, Chris Collins because of the indictment, Utah out there, you've got a state that has just been allergic to, a deep red state that has been allergic to Donald Trump. And when you start looking at that path to a 23-seat gain for Democrats, if they could pick off a couple of districts like this, that could go a long way. If they fall short in a couple other places, but they pick up a couple that in normal times they would have no business picking up, that can be a difference maker right there. So I think you're seeing that in three potential places here with these new polls.
You know, Steve, we've been talking about the Kavanaugh effect for the past week or so in all the polling, and if you actually went to the upshot, perhaps it was just random selection, but if you went to the upshot for the weeks during and after the Kavanaugh hearings, you would see one Republican after another actually winning House races. Now, it seems to be the Democrats that are doing better in Virginia 10, which of course is Barbara Comstock's Northern Virginia district. That's been a tough one for her all along. Jennifer Wexton, the Democrat, ahead of her there by 7 points. This is one of those suburban districts that are going to be so hard for Republicans to hold.
Well, right, and again, here's my question when you get to to sort of races like this. The question I have is there a post-Kavanaugh effect where districts like this that you're looking at here, the suburbs of Washington, D.C., a place Hillary Clinton won by 10 points in 2016, is the Democratic energy, especially post-Kavanaugh, so strong in places like this that you're going to get a series of giant blue waves in districts like this, in New Jersey, outside Denver, outside Kansas City, outside Chicago, outside Washington, D.C. The question I have, though, is when you go to the next level of district, a place where Donald Trump maybe did a little bit better in 2016, maybe narrowly won it, maybe won it by, a 5 to 8 point margin, those districts that Democrats have been targeting where they've been getting a lot of good news, positive indicators all year, what I think we still need to see here, and we're just going to need more polling on this, we need to see if there is a post-Kavanaugh effect that is solidifying Republicans in those places and potentially narrowing somewhat the options for Democrats, where Democrats could be doing even better now in these suburban areas, but sort of the extra layer on top of that they've been hoping for.
That's what I was wondering.
I want to see how they're doing there.
Well, Mika, we've been talking an awful lot about how the Kavanaugh hearings impact red states like Tennessee, Texas,
right.
Missouri, but I'll tell you what, no doubt it's helped for at least a week after the Kavanaugh hearings. It certainly helped Republican candidates there. But if winning the House depends on not offending suburban voters any more than Donald Trump already has, then they're going to be a nightmare in those suburban districts. The Kavanaugh hearings will have the opposite effect in those districts for Democrats, and will actually help Democrats a good bit.
I was predicting more of a net effect of both Democrats and Republicans getting riled up post Kavanaugh,
right?
And for the same reasons, but they're on the opposite side of the argument. So I wasn't sure if it was really going to be a massive boost for Democrats across the board.
Well, no doubt it's going to help Republicans in red states, at least on the margins. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like 3 weeks from now. but certainly those suburban districts in California, the one that Barbara Comstock's fighting in right now, I'm sure Barbara and other candidates like that, Steve, would just as soon not hear the words Kavanaugh again over the next 21 days. Let's go to Colorado 6, where Democrat Jason Crow has a comfortable lead over Mike Kaufman, who is the incumbent.
Yeah, and again, this is exactly what I was talking about. We should say this is still a poll with it's incomplete at this point. There might be some more numbers that change a little bit, but it's consistent, I think, with what expectations are in this district. Again, suburban district. Hillary Clinton did very well here in 2016. And again, if you have this idea potentially of two Kavanaugh effects, this is where you would expect to see this helping Democrats and energizing Democrats. Outside Chicago, I said there's some examples there as well. I think the issue here for Democrats is when you start looking at districts that fit this profile, if the overall number they need to hit is 23, you can very quickly get yourself past a dozen pickups that look like they're right there. A couple other extras like we were talking about. The question is, what's on top of that?
So let's find another district. Here we are, the next one that the upshots
about the stupid thing he did last night. She was pregnant and had to pee all night. It was painful, whatever. There was always something in common. Today, the most watched cable news programming in America is Hannity at 3.2, 3.5 million viewers. That's 1% of the public. And so right now, there is no 70% conversation. And I think the president is pretty good at puppet mastering, getting the media to have a new frenzy every 4 to 24 hours. And that doesn't help us 4 to 24 years from now. Them is trying to talk about the habits we need to build for our kids for 4 to 24 years from now.
There's a line in the book about tribalism. Donald Trump created none of this. He simply plays the fiddle better than anyone has ever managed before. Senator Ben Sasse, thank you.
Thanks.
Always good to see. The new book, Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal, is out today. And by the way, I looked down the schedule for you. A week from Saturday, Bethune-Cookman's coming to Lincoln. That win's coming, my friend.
That'll be win number 2. We got Minnesota this weekend.
Okay, I'll take your word. Still ahead on Morning Joe, we've got 3 very outspoken guests standing by. New York Times columnist Bret Stephens, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, Ben Rhodes, and Russian pro-democracy activist Garry Kasparov. They all join us when Morning Joe comes right back.
Nothing says fall like a homecoming football game, so let's promote our fall travel deal on choicehotels.com like this.
Touchdown.
Earn a free night when you stay just twice this fall.
Or bada book, bada boom.
Book now at choicehotels.com. Guys, it's your time to lose weight, to get healthy, to get results. Check out Nutrisystem for Men.
The food was delicious. I didn't have to count, measure, or weigh anything. I was eating pasta, pizza, bagels.
Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall your first month.
It's flexible. I can even eat out with family and friends. My dad is so proud of me now. You eat the food and you lose the weight.
Order your 28-day plan and save 40% off every program. Plus, it's shakes free.
We were definitely searching for something special, and we weren't going to stop until we found it.
We talked to our friends and we did some research, and that's how we found Amica Car Insurance.
When you have Amica, you don't just feel like you have a policy, you have an ally.
Have you found Amica Auto Insurance yet? This is a great day to get a quote. We tailor the coverage to you, so you get the protection you really need. Give us a call right now or get a quote online. You'll know right away you found something special. Welcome to Amica. This is helpfulness insured.
We use Angie's List because we can always find great local pros.
For any type of home project.
I use Angie's List if I need to find a plumber,
An electrician.
a painter.
I always use Angie's List because it's free.
It's free for me to read reviews written by real customers.
We can check their reputation to make sure they do quality work. And now, to save time, Angie's List can actually match my project to a few qualified pros who can do the job.
To get the most reviews from real customers, all for free, go to angieslist.com today.
Don't
CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for people taking cholesterol-lowering statin drugs. Cunol, with 3 times better absorption than regular CoQ10, has the #1 cardiologist-recommended form of CoQ10. Cunol, the better CoQ10. The following is based on reality. You may be offended.
I've fallen. Please help me. Help. Someone, please help me.
When you fall and cannot get up, an accident can turn into a tragedy. With Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
This is Life Alert. I'm calling for help right now.
With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately. And batteries never need charging. Life Alert saves a life from a catastrophe every 11 minutes. For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-920-5659. That's 1-800-920-5659. Call now. 1-800-920-5659.
Right now, Iraq is a training ground for terrorists. Right now, Libya, nobody even knows Libya.
The world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
and Gaddafi in power.
100%. It's great to be with the President of Egypt, and I just want to say to you, Mr. President, that you have a great friend and ally in the United States and in me. King Solomon, your father would be very, very proud to see that you are continuing his legacy. It's a great honor and privilege, because he's become a friend of mine, to introduce President Erdogan of Turkey. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be. I like him, he likes me. I guess that's okay. Am I allowed to say that? We fell in love.
President Donald Trump's praise for authoritarian leaders. Our next guests are contributing writers for a new book out today titled Fight for Liberty, Defending Democracy in the Age of Trump, which is a collection of essays that analyze threats to the liberal world order. Joining us are columnist for the New York Times, Bret Stephens, and chairman of both the Renewed Democracy Initiative and the Human Rights Foundation, former world chess champion Garry Kasparov, and former deputy national security advisor to President Obama, Ben Rhodes, and NBC national political reporter Heidi Przybyla rejoins our conversation. Thank you all for being here. It's good to see you. Ben, let me start with you on this story about the Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. It appears today, according to NBC's reporting, that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is going to go out with a story that says he was accidentally killed inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. President Trump got out front of the story by mentioning rogue killers early yesterday. Now it looks like Saudi Arabia is going to say it was rogue operatives. What do you make as you watch this?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't think anybody who's any experience with the Saudis could think it was possible that a team like this, of 15 people, could go to Turkey on a high-profile mission like this without the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia knowing about it and authorizing it. That is an incredibly centralized top-down leadership. It's become even more so under Mohammed bin Salman. So the notion that this could have been a rogue operation, I think, is unbelievable. And it feels really like the Trump administration is trying to help them come up with a story to get this out of the headlines. You know, what they want to do is, pull down the temperature and move forward, which I think is a tragic abdication of what we should be doing, which is holding the Saudis to account for squelching dissent like this and putting on the table real consequences, like whether or not we're going to continue to support a war in Yemen that has gone out of control, whether or not we're going to continue to sell arms to a regime that would kill somebody in another country for expressing their views. So I think it's of a pattern of what you showed, which is Donald Trump believes authoritarian leaders when they give him assurances. He doesn't give our allies that same benefit of the doubt.
So in a parallel universe, if you were working on this in a previous administration, what would be happening right now? When Mike Pompeo goes to speak to the king, speaks to the Crown Prince, what would you be saying directly to him?
Well, first of all, one of the things that we'd be doing, which is not happening, is mobilizing the rest of the democracies around the world to have a united front on this. We would have U.S. statements coordinated with Europe condemning this and warning of consequences, so that you go into that meeting with a bigger team. And then I think you'd go in and say, we need a full accounting of this, and frankly, number one, there has to be consequences, but number two, even if that accounting comes out, there still have to be consequences to show that we don't stand for this. And so I would be putting on the table, again, very real things like whether or not we continue to support a war in Yemen that has precipitated a humanitarian crisis, and whether or not we continue these arms sales, which feel like a blank check for the Saudis, because they can just give us money, and in return, we look the other way when they do anything.
Gary, we played the sort of clips of the greatest hits of President Trump talking about authoritarians around the world. Yes, praising it. And then again yesterday, sort of giving Saudi Arabia the benefit of the doubt, saying he said very strongly it wasn't him, and now we're going to learn today that Saudi Arabia is going to come out and say, in fact, it was us, it was just a mistake.
Yes, I think President Trump famously said that he could shoot someone on the Fifth Avenue, and he would not lose support of his base. And I think for him, killing journalists and political opponents, it's probably not a crime. So and somehow I feel that he envies these leaders, totalitarian leaders around the world, that they can do whatever they want, to subdue political opposition.
I think part of the problem here is that we have a foreign policy under Trump, which is supposed to be an interest-based rather than a values-based foreign policy. And I think what you're seeing here is how that literally blows up in America's face, because America is a democracy and we have problems. Normal Americans have problems supporting a regime that is as brazen as murdering or beheading journalists in their own consulates. So putting values at the center of your foreign policy turns out to be essential American strategic interest.
Mika?
Ben, I'm just curious, because you laid out some of the obvious steps that could be taken in the case of Mr. Khashoggi. But what message do you think, the way the president is handling this, we sort of came into the show this morning saying that he was naive. But I think it might be a little bit more destructive and dangerous. Hedging on whether or not they did it or not, almost siding them, sort of not, sowing doubt. What message is that sending to the world, to our strategic partners, and basically in terms of our foreign policy?
Well, I think it's a very dangerous message, Mika. I mean, first of all, the message that the Saudis wanted to send, and that they have sent, is that you're not safe anywhere if you criticize us. And frankly, they probably don't mind all of this attention because it's sending that message for them. If you're a Saudi dissident or journalist anywhere in the world, you're thinking twice. And the message that President Trump is sending is that there's no consequences. And what you have to realize is there's nobody else who can play the role of the United States to hold people like this to account. We are the world's oldest and most significant democracy. And if we're not doing this, if we're not standing up for this, there's not somebody else who's going to do that. And the consequences of that are journalists everywhere are less safe. And let's face it, we have a president of the United States who says journalists are the enemy of the state. So values like freedom of speech and dissent suddenly are very endangered around the world. And that's a trend line that I think is getting much worse. And so this vacuum of any advocacy for democratic values, I think, is putting people at risk. And there's nobody else who's going to fill that vacuum if the President of the United States and the United States of America is not doing that.
And Gary, in Fight for Liberty, you talk about how at one time the spread of democracy seemed to be unstoppable, and yet we now find ourselves at a place in time where there is a real threat that those democratic trend lines are going to be reversed.
Yes, it's the first time since the end of the Cold War, so we are facing the decline of all indexes of freedom and democracy around the world. It's for more than a decade straight. And I think the free world has failed to come up with a strategy, comprehensive strategy of promoting democracy and the values. And as just Brett said, it's a foreign policy of the United States today is just a policy of interest, very often short-term interest, and not of the values that could lead the way. America basically abandoned its role as a global leader of the free world and looks for specific interests that sometimes are just contradicting these strategic objectives.
We've also, in the past, we've had periods when authoritarian regimes have been strengthening, particularly in the 1930s. But at the time, in the United States, core leadership, Franklin Roosevelt and after him Harry Truman and the succession of American presidents, believed in the values of liberalism and democracy. They're what defined the Western world at the time. And what's so dangerous, I think, about this period is that you have at the core of the West this kind of rot represented in a Trump administration that sees a lot to praise in dictators and not much to praise in democracies.
But I think it's also a result of the sort of long-term policy of appeasement, because Crown Prince could look at Putin and Putin's record of killing his enemies both inside and outside of Russia, and looking at the rise of other dictators. I think it's very important to understand it's some kind of it's a domino effect. If one dictator can do it, then others think, why not? Dictators never ask why. It's always why not. And they saw no consequences. Yes, this is the big hype now about this murder, but from Saudi's perspective, maybe it could have a positive effect for their strategic objectives, because it could silence some of the potential critics that could be simply afraid.
Joe? So Gary, talk about, if you will, because we focus, I think, sometimes too much on the impact that Donald Trump's language, his actions will have on totalitarian leaders. You were a citizen in the totalitarian Soviet Union. We heard stories after 1989, after 1991, after the Soviet Union fell, of people that were behind the Iron Curtain actually taking heart. From the words of every American president, from JFK at the Berlin Wall to Ronald Reagan at the Berlin Wall, we heard of dissidents that were trapped in the Soviet Union, listening to American presidents' words and believing that the fight was worth it. What is the impact when you have a president like Donald Trump doing the opposite of what JFK did, the opposite of what Ronald Reagan did, and seeming to embrace these authoritarian figures?
Somehow I hope that Donald Trump will have a positive effect in this country, because it's a wake-up call. Because people here ignore the Ronald Reagan's warning that the freedom is always one generation away from extinction. And now with Donald Trump, I think people here are just slowly getting they're recognizing the fact that these institutions are solid but getting rusty, and it's very important now to look back and to understand what can be done to make sure that Donald Trump and the like will not be elected and will not be discrediting U.S. reputation around the globe.
So Ben, one of the bottom lines in this story is that this morning we have the American Secretary of State in Riyadh basically telling the Saudi Arabians, we're going to take your story, we're going to help make it a little bit better, a little bit more saleable. Your response earlier was that what should happen now is we should form a strategic alliance of the nations to sit down and hash this out and tell the Saudis they can no longer do stuff like this. My question to you is, what allies? Where are our allies? Yeah. Who are they?
Well, at its core, it's our European allies who share...
Who we've insulted.
Who we've insulted, exactly. I mean, and that's what's so damaging, and that's where these pieces connect, is that when you have a Donald Trump who's shown himself much more willing to criticize an Angela Merkel or Justin Trudeau, when you need those countries, and when you need them to do something hard, standing up to Saudi Arabia, it's harder to build that coalition, and frankly, we're not even trying. But ultimately, look, this is a tough world, and you have a China that is emerging, that is anti-democratic. You have a government in Russia that is seeking to reassert itself in a very authoritarian way. Even with the United States, all our strength, we need a team. We need other people who share our values, who have their own power and influence around the world, to work with us. And frankly, just the other side of the coin of Donald Trump praising all these authoritarian leaders is him saying, even on 60 Minutes the other day, he said, well, I don't even know if they're allies. And he said, I don't know if NATO has been a good bet for us. I don't know if NATO prevented a World War III. Those were his own words. NATO is the core security institution of countries that share values and interests. They're all democracies in NATO, and we're supposed to be standing up for those democratic values, and we're supposed to lead a chorus of voices. One of the great privileges serving in government is when you realize that the United States would comment on something like this case, and you'd feel the Europeans coming behind you, you'd feel Japan coming behind you, and that's what's missing.
So, Ben, you said last night with Chris Hayes that it was a mistake for the Obama administration to back the Saudis in the war in Yemen. We know about the civilian deaths. We know about the famine. We know about the refugee crisis. Is this a good leverage point for the United States to stop backing that war?
I think so. And, our basic approach was we had concerns about the war and we had concerns about the Crown Prince. We thought by giving them some support and then at times pulling that back, so tapping the brakes, putting restraints on certain weapons that went to them, urging them to get a political solution, that we could influence the direction of events, and we were wrong about that. And the fact of the matter is, when the Trump administration came in, any restraints went off. And all the things that we saw Mohammed bin Salman pressing towards the end of our administration have come to fore. The war in Yemen has escalated. You had that bizarre situation with the Prime Minister of Lebanon essentially being held hostage in Saudi Arabia. You had this roundup of his political opponents in the Ritz. You have this fight with Qatar that has really led nowhere. And frankly, we see him asserting himself in ways that are very potentially destabilizing and frankly, clearly silencing dissent inside of the kingdom. And we have to exert some leverage. The Saudis need us more than we need them. And there's this imbalance in how this is playing out. You would think that they were the superpower, and we're not.
So, Brett, I'll give you the last word here. How does this play out? Based on the rhetoric we've heard from the president yesterday that he believed the denial, based on what we're going to hear from Saudi Arabia reportedly today, that it was all an accident in the middle of an interrogation, what happens here? Does the United States exert any pressure on Saudi Arabia at the end of the day?
My suspicion is that they're going to seek some kind of admission, limited, modified, hangout kind of deal in which they say that we accidentally killed Khashoggi in an attempt to render him back to Saudi Arabia. The problem that the administration has is that it sees the Saudis as a pillar in their overarching desire to stop the Iranians. And as long as the Saudis play that card, they're going to get a lot of leeway from the administration.
It's worth saying one more time. The argument goes from Saudi Arabia, we just meant to kidnap, torture, and interrogate him, and we ended up killing him by mistake. Bret Stephens, Garry Kasparov, thank you both. The book is Fight for Liberty, Defending Democracy in the Age of Trump. It's out today. Ben Rhodes, thank you. Good to see you as well. Still ahead this morning, Defense Secretary James Mattis is fighting off speculation that there's a rift between himself and President Trump. What he told reporters about their relationship and his future in the administration when Morning Joe comes right back.
When we break news,
We begin this morning with some breaking news.
we're merely breaking the surface of the story.
Jaw-dropping breaking news. Paul Manafort flipped in Mueller's investigation.
But the only way to uncover the whole story is to dig deeper than anyone else. What's happening inside Average Underwear? What's happening inside Duluth Bullpen Underwear? Duluth Trading Bullpen Underwear with Stay Put Pouch. Keep your boys where they belong. Only at Duluth stores and DuluthTrading.com.
Here we go. Discover, I like your card, but I'm absolutely not paying an annual fee.
Discover has no annual fees.
Really?
Yeah, we just don't believe in them.
Oh, nice. You would not believe how long I've been rehearsing that.
No annual fee on any card, only from Discover.
I finally figured out what card to get. Now, where to find the best deal? What's that?
Car Gurus, 2 grand below market value, 5-star dealer rating. Ooh, I'm beat.
Car Gurus. Find great deals from top-rated dealers near you.
No more excuses with Cologuard.
We all make excuses for things we don't want to do. But when it comes to colon cancer screening,
I'm not doing that. I eat plenty of kale.
as I was saying, with Cologuard, you don't need an excuse.
All that prep? No thanks. That drink tastes horrible.
But there's no prep with Cologuard.
I can't take the time off work. Who has 2 days? And I feel fine. No symptoms.
Everybody, listen. All you need is a trip to the bathroom. If you're 50 or older and at average risk, Cologuard is the non-invasive option that finds 92% of colon cancers. You just get the kit in the mail, go to the bathroom, collect your sample, then ship it to the lab. This is your year. Own it.
Cologuard is not right for everyone. It is not for high-risk individuals, including those with a history of colon cancer or precancer, IBD, certain hereditary cancer syndromes, or a family history of colon cancer. Ask your doctor if Cologuard is right for you. Covered by Medicare and most major insurance insures.
At touchofmodern.com, things you'd never think possible are totally attainable. The shoes are handmade, the furniture glows, the drones fly themselves. And that's just the beginning. Our relentless pursuit of the highest quality in watches, fashion, tech, and home are available all in one place. Touchofmodern.com. We bring something new and unexpected to your life every day. So go to touchofmodern.com and be the first to discover all the novel and noteworthy items the world has to offer.
Welcome to BritBox. This is the new streaming home of Great British Telly. Browse mysteries to histories, comedies to cookery. Fancy a cuppa? Exclusive new shows and loved classics. It's the biggest streaming collection of British TV ever. Not to mention the most handsome. Escape to BritBox. Start your free trial today at BritBox.com.
We live in the mayhem of the Trump era.
There is chaos in the building behind you.
What we do at 4 o'clock is try to cut right to the bone of what we're seeing in Washington that day. How does no one quit when the president is constantly tweeting smears about law enforcement?
One word, power.
We also laugh at that which is totally ridiculous. Very eager to hear your reaction.
Well, I don't even know where to start.
Go! All the time you need.
Deadline White House with Nicole Wallace. Weekdays at 4 on MSNBC.
You know, following the 2016 election week, everybody was focused on Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump. That obviously was a marquee race. It's had massive impact. But when you talk about the strengths or the weaknesses of the Democratic Party, after the election, people started looking back over Barack Obama's 8 years in office and realizing that Democrats had not only lost the big race in 16, but had lost over 1,000 local state legislative races, lost a lot of gubernatorial seats, lost a lot of local races. And so Heidi, why don't you get us up to date on what's happening in 2018? Does that trend line, that disastrous trend line for Democrats continue into 2018, or do Democrats believe they're going to turn it around this year?
So I think this could be one of the most underreported stories in this election cycle, Joe, and that is what's happening with the governorships and also at the state legislative level.